Why is it that when you use a dating app, you swipe and swipe and swipe, and after a while you get so bored you don't even want to go out on a date? This is Dr. Wendy Walsh. How dating apps can actually biohack your evolutionary programming unless you use them correctly. This is Mating Matters. Romance, dating, falling in love. Choosing a romantic partner to share your dinner table, your bed, or your entire life is frankly the most important decision a human can ever make. This is Dr. Wendy Walsh. Welcome to Mating Matters. It's why we do what we do. In this episode, Dating Apathy. Are dating apps changing the way we relate? This is important because making the wrong decision can be downright dangerous. Sorry to break it to you, but poor romantic decisions can lead to poverty, physical injury, or even death. And the greater risk lies with women. Did you know that half of murdered women are killed by their intimate partner? Every day in America, 3 women are killed by their lover. Yikes! Fortunately, that doesn't happen to the vast majority of lovers. But finding a safe, reliable romantic partner who will keep you out of poverty, stimulate you emotionally and intellectually, and also be physically attractive, well, that's a tall order. Long before there was the internet and smartphone dating apps, lovers mostly met through a personal introduction or a chance meeting. In the movie Isn't It Romantic, Rebel Wilson and Liam Hemsworth's characters have a chance encounter of their own.
You're quite beguiling, aren't you? Are you feeling what I'm feeling?
No!
But then along came a much more efficient way to meet people: media. First, in the 1980s, it was print media. People took out small personal ads in the back of newspapers and magazines. Remember the Pina Colada song by Rupert Holmes?
I read the paper in bed. In the personal column, there was this letter I read.
Yeah, those 2 philandering lovers found each other again through a personal ad. After personal ads, the internet came along. In the 1990s movie You've Got Mail, Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks launched a silver screen email romance that echoed what so many people were experiencing in the 1990s as their courtship began to grow through technology.
I turn on my computer. I go online.
Welcome.
And my breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words.
You got mail.
What is going on with you? Is it infidelity if you're involved with someone on email?
Move over, AOL. Dating then got fast.
Good morning.
Real fast.
That's your name, here.
From dating websites to dating apps. From swishes to pings, likes, matches, messaging, and yes, ghosting. Millions of people all over the world dove into online dating. I want you to know that there's plenty of good about online dating, and there's a bit of bad too, if you don't know what you're doing. First of all, dating apps make it easier to find that special someone, that unicorn, so to speak. But the technology itself is not only changing the way we relate, it could actually be changing our brains. But no matter what your fancy, there is a never-ending array of dating websites and apps that appeal to every niche market, from religious people to the polyamorous, from farmers to gay people.
I've been on and off using a variety of
Zusk.
about
Am I pronouncing that right? Zusk. Christian Mingle.
So when I was in college is when I started using them. Started off with Tinder.
So I've used Tinder, I've used Bumble. Those are the 2 that I've used the most. I used OkCupid back in the day and Plenty of Fish as well.
So Bumble, where you can...
I've used Tinder. I've used Grindr.
It's up to
I've
the
used
woman.
another
So
app
basically,
called
you
Chappie,
have,
which is
the chance
where
to
you can meet other gay
choose
men.
who can
And
host
then
first.
online, I've used Match.
So I liked that for a while. And now I'm on a dating app called Hinge, most recently.
Let's start with the good news. People are indeed meeting and marrying through online connections.
So I went on Match, and I was on Match actually for about 10 days.
That's a single mother with an 11-year-old daughter. She told me she'd just come out of an 18-month relationship. That one had begun as an introduction through friends, but had gone sour. So she decided to try online dating. Yes, she met the perfect guy after only 10 days. Her criteria, though, was strict. Her prospective mate had to be a Christian, live nearby, and seem like the kind of guy who could be a good stepfather and mix well with her family. To determine that, she brought her mother and daughter to first dates.
Because we're the package, so I'm not going to waste my time. If you can't take us, forget it. So I wanted him to know what he's getting into. And my mom brought her boyfriend, and who happened to know the person I was meeting, and it worked out great. And 45 days later, we actually got engaged. The wedding will be 6.5 months away.
Wow. She's not alone. A 2013 study from researchers at the University of Chicago and Harvard University found that 1/3 of American marriages now begin as online meetings, and that marriages that began online were slightly less likely to result in a marital breakup, and they were associated with slightly higher marital satisfaction. Of course, I should add this is a self-report internet study. While the large number of participants, nearly 20,000, is quite impressive, questions remain about how honestly people answer self-report studies, or whether the personality types of people who prefer online dating factor in. Either way, this is promising research. The other positive news about online dating is that it's really good for subgroups who may have a very small, like-minded dating pool in their own communities. Ethnic and religious minorities, people with disabilities, gender variances, and sexual orientation differences. In fact, dating apps began with a single app called Grindr. Grindr was designed to help gay men find friends wherever they went. For most gay people, online dating is far more positive than negative.
I think mostly positive because it's for me, I don't want to meet people in bars, and it's particularly, it's harder in the gay world because you have a safe place to meet people, right? And those environments provide an easy place, and it's an easy way to make introductions.
So that's the good news. People are actually meeting, mating, and committing through online meetings. And online dating is particularly helpful for subgroups because of people who don't have much dating opportunity, either because they live in small communities or because they're a minority. Online dating also saves a whole lot of time. You don't have to get dressed up. You don't need to spend money and time in bars and nightclubs. And you can vet people before you waste time on a date. You can do a Google search or even a full background check. In some ways, this makes online dating safer than meeting a random stranger in a dark club. Now, here's the bad news. Just like a nightclub, dating apps are filled with people looking for long-term relationships, short-term relationships, affairs, and polyamorous group fun. And they're all lumped together, so it's kind of buyer beware. Asking people what they're looking for and advertising exactly what you'd like to find is crucial, though people still like to lie. Oh, and speaking of lying, online dating, sadly, also hosts a lot of scammers. Scammers fall into one of two categories. In category one are lonely people, unhappy with their own lives, who pretend to be the person they wish they were. And to conceal their fraud, they're very skilled at providing excuses as to why they can't meet up in the real world. These are called catfishes, and there's a whole documentary and MTV series that shows some pretty shocking reveals. It's called Catfish.
A young guy named Dylan contacted me and Max after receiving an anonymous tip claiming his online love, Allie, was actually an imposter.
I'm just like dumbfounded.
Whoa.
I don't even know how they got my number.
Once we started digging, we soon discovered that whoever Dylan was talking to had actually catfished people before.
Then there are the criminal romance scammers. These people are often part of syndicates in countries like Nigeria and Ghana. They prey on lonely people around the world by getting them to fall in love with them online, and eventually they ask for money.
I talked to him a few times. We messaged every day.
Johnson says she and Cole engaged in a 2-year online relationship, but never met in person. Over the course of their relationship, Johnson says she gave Cole more than $1 million in increments.
At this point, your heart rules your head, and I was doing what my heart wanted me to do.
In the most egregious cases, romance scammers practice extortion. They record people's most intimate conversations or even videotape Skype sex and threaten to post it online if the victim doesn't pay the money.
Tonight, a heartbreaking family tragedy. A father from Yonkers is dead, and his family believes it's all because he was sucked into an international romance and money scheme, causing him to lose everything and even steal from relatives.
That's the tricky thing about love. It's like a drug and can make our brains do just about anything to keep it. Now, for most people, online dating, when used safely, that is, with Google searches, real-world meetings, and the latest invention, use of social media that shows how many friends you actually have in common, all that is a positive experience. But there's one other shortcoming to online dating apps. They can become addictive. Justin Garcia is the research director at the Kinsey Institute and scientific advisor for Match.com.
One of the issues seems to be that it's been what we say is gamified, and that the apps, they feel like a game, and you can swipe through dozens or hundreds of pictures in a few minutes. And that changes the way we're interacting with potential partners or people that we're assessing.
Many people, like this 40-year-old single father, fall prey to the lure of a perfect happy ending.
Everyone wants to be wanted, and I want people to be wanted. I love the romantic endings. I believe in happy endings, and I might, go to my grave with that philosophy. And I think that that's what the dating sites propose, is that happy ending.
For this man, scammers weren't the problem. It was the addictive quality of dating apps that keeps one glued to the app rather than dating in the real world. It's caused by a delicious rush of the neurohormone dopamine. Every time there's a match or a new message promising romantic opportunity, your brain gets a tiny hit. Since dating apps reward the brain at random intervals with varying sizes of rewards, a message from a particularly attractive person might bring more dopamine than an average-looking person. The apps act exactly like a slot machine, trapping the brain in addictive systems of rewards. Just like gambling, dating apps work using classical conditioning. Remember Pavlov and his dog? Except the stimulus isn't a bell and the reward isn't a food treat. The stimulus with a dating app is a swipe, and the reward is a match. Here's Justin Garcia again.
Well, it turns out that in those studies, what works best is every so often when you ring that bell, you don't give a treat to the animal in the test condition, a dog, a rat, a fish. Now, for the dating apps, there's something similar that's happening, that you get this sort of periodic reward that keeps you hooked, exactly like you said. It's like gambling. And that's a mix of things. Part of that can be the algorithms, depending on the company and the app and the site, and part of it is just sort of random choice, that you're going through so many dozens or hundreds of options, you'll occasionally find one that you like, and occasionally find one that messages you or likes you, or you both swipe right.
I don't know, it reminds me of a Las Vegas casino. There's no clocks. There's so much diversion. The farther you get into the casino, the harder it is to come on out.
You probably get a bit of a high from it, knowing it's a way of seeking validation from other people. How many times did I swipe right today? How many responses and reciprocations of that did I receive? If I swiped right, 25 times, I got 13 people that swiped right too. I was like, oh man, I'm really feeling pretty good about myself.
And at the beginning, it was super fun, just like any normal addiction, I think. And then eventually, it kind of just took over. And so I would spend time looking at these sites while I was in traffic. And there would be just a wash of energy if anybody ever responded. And there would be like, it was fun. It felt good to be acknowledged. But slowly but surely, it felt like it was taking my self-esteem apart.
Besides being addictive, dating apps can also create something psychologists call a paradox of choice. The more choices a human being is presented with, the less likely they are to make a choice, and the less happy they feel with the choices they make.
There's a sense that there's an unlimited number of options. You can go on an app and swipe for an hour, especially if it's somewhere, like LA or New York or Miami with population density. You could swipe for hours and hours and hours. And that changes the way that we interact with the app, in part because it changes the way we think about the people on the other side of that app. We think, well, if they're not perfect, there's another one, and there's another one, and there's another one. And we often end up chasing these, what Rob Sternberg calls our love stories, right? We're chasing these ideal notions of, well, my partner has to be exactly like this.
And this makes us less happy with our choice.
Some scientists think it's because we sometimes always have a foot out the door. We always think, well, if this isn't great, there's another 1,000.
Besides being tricked by a paradox of choice, dating apps also create a similar phenomenon that Garcia calls cognitive overload.
We have a hard time deciding, right, particularly when to say yes. And in part, that's when we've got such a large menu or so many options. We have a really difficult time making a decision.
Remember the young woman who's been using dating apps since she was in college? She's definitely beginning to suffer from what I call dating apathy.
I mean, even when I'm looking for a movie to watch on Netflix, I get stressed out because I'm like, oh God, there's so many choices. I don't want to watch anything anymore. I'm done. And then I'm like, I throw down the remote and I'm like, let me go do something else. But I mean, if I was like going to Blockbuster and I'm like, okay, I have to rent one movie. I see all the movies right here in my face. I know where the new selections are. I know where the old movies are. Like, it's easy. I can go in, I get it, and I'm dedicated to it because I worked a little bit for that movie. If I'm on an app, I'm just swiping, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter. So many choices. Doesn't matter.
Even if you do get a match, next begins a texting marathon.
When people send me those endless texts, what I typically do at some point, you just have to cut it off, right? Because it doesn't go anywhere and it's a waste of time that you could spend elsewhere.
Here's the man who told us he was once addicted to dating apps.
Online sites are time banded. So once the conversations start going, I would lose out on my own family time, my own people's time. My own tribe would lose out time with me, even if I was in the room. Even if we were at dinner, I wasn't. I'm looking at the site.
Eventually, this man stopped using all dating apps. He even closed most of his social media accounts.
I had to come to a moment of self-realization. So now I've completely taken down my Instagram. I'm in the midst of taking down my Facebook, just, for business purposes. I don't want to live digitally at all now. It is a wonderful feeling.
And if scammers, addiction, and paradox of choice aren't enough, many first-time online daters become rattled by a new dating social trend called ghosting.
Ghosting is the worst. It is the worst. It's when you really like somebody and then they just all of a sudden just fall off the face of the earth. It's like, what happened to you? I know one guy, I met him on an app. We really had a connection. We'd FaceTime, we'd Snapchat, we'd text. We did not meet yet, though. So we were about to meet, and I don't know what happened to him. He just left.
Even though she's young and accustomed to dating app etiquette, she says she'll never get used to being ghosted.
I mean, it feels like you've been rejected, and especially after putting your effort into somebody, it's like a slam in the face. Like, you're just like, what in the world is happening? And they'll block your phone number, your Instagram, your Facebook. You will not be able to tell anything about what they're doing. And that's the worst feeling because you don't have answers. And when you don't have answers, your mind wanders and you're just thinking like, is it me? Am I ugly? Am I annoying? Am I just a terrible person?
I know a few things about love. There are plenty of hormones and neurotransmitters involved in the process of love. The early lustful phase is dominated by testosterone and estrogen. But secure attachment is a calmer, cozier drug, ruled by vasopressin and oxytocin. So, thinking about dating apps, I came up with this theory. I mean, everybody knows that the most unstable stages of love are at the very beginning and the end. And that's when we crave dopamine and norepinephrine to cope with those feelings of uncertainty. Does he like me? Are we a couple? Are we breaking up? What's happening? The middle stage is when we securely settle down into companionate love and experience attachment with those yummy bursts of oxytocin and vasopressin. My hypothesis is that dating apps trap people in the beginnings and endings of relationships, with sporadic bursts of dopamine not unlike that slot machine in Vegas. Dating apps train humans to become addicted to new partners as a kind of dopamine addiction. But many never get the payoff of feelings of security that come with oxytocin and vasopressin. There are many people who get blasts of dopamine through endless online interactions, likes, matches, and messages with people they've never met in the real world. Then they satisfy their cravings for surges in testosterone and estrogen and other hormones through online pornography, hacking their biochemistry with technology. I pose my theory to the Kinsey Institute's Dr. Justin Garcia that using the app alone And then also the kind of texting relationships, multiple texting relationships that come out of these apps. For many people, that's enough. It starts to create enough dopamine that they literally don't need to date.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's a piece that no one's talking about, that there's a number of people that have swiping all day and talking to a bunch of people, they're sort of getting satiated. They're sort of getting whether it's the intimate and sexual communication or just the social connections. I think that we're starting to see a little bit of evidence, and you're ahead of the curve, for we don't have the data yet to say it, but I think you're right. That's what everything is starting to indicate.
And there's something else I think technology is doing to us. I think dating apps can actually change our brains, impacting our reward centers and rewiring how we perceive the world and love. For some, this is the new normal.
It's a bizarre form of biohacking, really, and that you can get these different types of social connections and intimate interactions and kind of feel okay. It's not necessarily fulfilling and maybe what many people want in the long term, but they can kind of ride it out.
So why is it that some people don't fall victim to this paradox of choice, this addictive quality, this biohack? Maybe it's how they use the app to avoid the neuro traps. Remember the gay man we spoke with earlier? He says he has great success with the apps and has formed many long-term relationships and close friendships.
Usually my objective is when I hear from someone is to quickly as possible meet them in person, because that's when you know, right? You have to see them in person. So that I don't really get off on the endless sort of back and forth conversation. I want to, as soon as I sort of vet them and make sure they're not a serial killer, right? I want to meet them in person.
And remember the woman who brought her mother and daughter to first dates and met her fiance after just 10 days online? Here's her advice to others.
A lot of it is luck. A lot of it is, I truly believe, a numbers game. But if everyone has the attitude you're responsible for your own happiness, there are a lot of people out there who want a relationship. And it's just, trying to weed out the people that you think may not fit and just go for it and just be safe and meet in a public place and tell your friends where you're at. Actually, I had 2 online dates before I met my fiance. And I was there for 15 minutes. And again, my mom and daughter showed up at the restaurant.
I would add to her advice, get on the phone quickly, within a few days. If you like what you hear, meet for a casual coffee soon after. If that goes well, then go off the app and stop and focus and ask your date to do the same.
You have to go through and sift through what you're looking for, but you have to be honest with who you are and what you want, and hopefully find that same person that is on your wavelength.
It's not that you have to commit and get married and be exclusive right away, but if you want to date, you've got to psychologically get yourself in the mode to do it. And there's a whole psychology and neurobiology of that focused attention and thinking about that person and not being distracted.
And if you do feel you're becoming addicted to the apps, shut them off for a few months. Take a break. That's what the young man who believes he had become addicted did.
Man, the natural version of meeting someone is just so much better. It takes a lot more work, but it's why it gives it a priceless feeling, whereas I just felt dollar store with the online dating sites.
And here's the best news of all about online dating. Not only do 1/3 of American marriages begin online, but research shows that couples who reported that they'd met online also reported greater marital satisfaction. Maybe those who have good relationship skills will always find a good mate, no matter where they swipe.
My whole life, I've been looking for this ideal person, and I was always trying to put a round peg in a square hole, trying to make it work. And I kind of gave up. And then I met him, and that's why we were engaged so quickly, is because when you spend your whole life looking for this type of person you have in your mind, and you know how you want to be loved, and you finally find that, you're not going to waste time and say there's someone else out there because you know you found it.
You just put your best self out there. Put yourself in the best profile. Put yourself looking as nice as you possibly can. Have a smile on your face. Have a positive message. And then see where it goes from there. I have always gotten a pretty solid response from that.
And I called that other person up and said, I think I found the love of my life.
Thank you for listening to Mating Matters. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh with my producer, Brooke Peterson. In our next episode, what is love? For real, the bio, psycho, social aspects of love. Mating Matters with Dr. Wendy Walsh is produced by iHeartMedia. It is researched, written, and hosted by me, Dr. Wendy Walsh, and produced and edited by Brooke Peterson. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Dr. Wendy Walsh. Listen to Mating Matters on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to your podcasts.